Breaking news today. Former Trump official Miles Taylor has come under fire from the president after voicing criticism of the administration. President Trump has responded by suspending Taylor's security clearance and initiating investigations into his conduct, labeling him a bad faith actor who sought personal gain and notoriety through betrayal. The White House accuses Taylor of abusing his role at Homeland Security by anonymously publishing critiques and allegedly leaking sensitive information. This move represents a significant shift in Trump's strategy towards dissenting former officials.
Hello, and welcome to That News Show, where we discuss the latest facts, fakes, and hypocrisy as reported by the legacy media. Let's roll the tape.
MSNBC reports this is just wrong. Miles Taylor speaks after Trump targeted him with an executive order. But what truly is wrong here? It's the media's fervent defense of a man who covertly sabotaged a sitting president while on the government's payroll. Remember Miles Taylor? He's the anonymous who penned that dramatic New York Times article claiming to be part of a resistance within the Trump administration. Now, he's surprisingly upset that there are repercussions for his actions. The president is fully justified in revoking security clearances from individuals who have proven they cannot be trusted. This isn't a modern blacklist, it's simply common sense. Yet it's interesting to note the hypocrisy of those who previously applauded as the past administration used federal agencies for political gain, now expressing concern over executive power. Isn't that ironic? Here we go again.
The Department of Justice to investigate the legality of the executive order levied against him. Back in April, Donald Trump signed an executive order inside the Oval Office targeting Taylor and former Trump cybersecurity chief Chris Krebs. They committed the sin in Donald Trump's eyes of saying that the 2020 election was the, quote, most secure in history. The executive order revoked their security clearances and tasked officials with investigating both Miles Taylor and Chris Krebs. According to Miles Taylor, the complaints are a test case to see whether independent watchdogs like the IG's offices are still actually independent, or whether they too have been taken off the playing field and co-opted and corrupted by Donald J. Trump.
Trump's actions are clear. Miles Taylor and Chris Krebs, former officials, actively chose to undermine the administration they once served. Holding a government position, especially in national security, demands loyalty and discretion, both of which they breached. The president is fully within his constitutional rights to manage security clearances. This isn't about political retribution, it's about exercising proper executive authority. The mainstream media erupts into predictable hysteria whenever President Trump uses these powers built into every commander-in-chief. Consider Miles Taylor's actions. He authored an anonymous critique while still on the government payroll, only to use this betrayal for book deals and media appearances. Far from being a principled whistleblower, Taylor was crafting his post-administration career at the expense of the very administration that employed him. Security clearances are not rights but privileges, reserved for those deemed trustworthy with national secrets. Revoking these clearances from individuals who show questionable judgment and loyalty is not only appropriate but necessary. It's ironic to see media outlets that previously applauded the Biden-Harris administration's use of federal agencies against political foes now decrying executive overreach. Their selective outrage is transparent and, frankly, an insult to the intelligence of the American people. From the start, the deep state bureaucracy has opposed President Trump. Career officials, believing they know better than the democratically elected president, have consistently undermined his agenda. This executive order is a clear message that such actions have consequences. President Trump was elected to drain the swamp, which includes dealing with entrenched bureaucrats who attempt to sabotage an administration from within. By enforcing this order, he is simply fulfilling his promise to restore accountability in Washington. This measure isn't about stifling criticism. It's about ensuring that those with access to sensitive information are reliable and responsible. The American people deserve a government that upholds these standards.
It's been a bumpy road, but as you know, we've kind of done this show before. Coming out against Donald Trump was a rough and tumble exercise. He made it so, but we always knew if he got reelected, his goal would be revenge, and that's exactly what he's trying to carry out.
What is he trying to do to you and your family?
Look, I think he wants to create a modern blacklist and have that blacklist ruin people's lives, because it's a lot of effort to go through with trying to pursue and prosecute hundreds of your enemies. Yeah. All you need to do is try to successfully do that to a couple to send a message. And that's what some of his officials have said is the point of these executive orders against me and Chris Krebs are to send a message. And to a certain extent, that works. I mean, in the immediate wake of this, I'm the sole income earner in my household. I had to leave my job. My wife, who stayed at home with our daughter, had to return to work so that we can buy diapers, so we can buy formula, so we can pay the mortgage.
When examining the facts, it becomes clear that this is not an overreach but a necessary step to restore accountability in government. The president is acting within the boundaries of executive authority, particularly regarding security clearances and the integrity of the federal workforce. For too long, entrenched bureaucrats have undermined the administration's directives, acting as if they are above the will of the voters and the president they elected. Under the previous administration of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, a culture emerged where unelected officials felt encouraged to resist and even sabotage executive policy. This is not how a constitutional republic should function. The American people elect a president to set policy, not to be second-guessed by career officials who are accountable to no one. When individuals like Taylor publicly air their grievances while still employed, it undermines not just the president but the principle of democratic accountability. Now, some critics are concerned about potential blacklists and chilling effects. It's important to recognize that security clearances are not entitlements. They are conditional on trustworthiness and loyalty to the lawful authority of the presidency. If someone cannot meet this standard, it is entirely appropriate to rescind these privileges. There is always a risk when executive power is used to address internal dissent. The line between necessary discipline and political retribution can sometimes blur. Given the pattern of resistance from within the bureaucracy during the last administration, decisive action is necessary to ensure that the president's policies are implemented faithfully. The alternative is a government run by unaccountable insiders, not by the representatives chosen by the people. While some may view this as a personal vendetta, the reality is that the president is upholding the fundamental principle that those entrusted with sensitive information must be reliable and committed to the administration's mission. This is not just good policy. It is essential for national security and the effective functioning of our government.
We have no idea what they're going to try to find, but I can remember being in the Oval Office with Donald Trump, and I think I've shared this with you before, as he talked about how in business you don't threaten to sue people because then they just blow you off. You sue them so they settle. And he said that to us. He talked about his view on getting leverage, and I suspect that's what they're trying to do right now. And it's very destructive, not just to us, but all the people around us that it affects.
When MSNBC describes this as a new overreach, it's important to remember that a president's authority to revoke security clearances is not only well established but also crucial for maintaining trust within the executive branch. The previous administration, led by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, created an environment where bureaucrats felt empowered to obstruct the president's agenda, often encouraged by mainstream media. This undermines the fundamental workings of a constitutional republic, where the elected president is supposed to set policy, not be undermined by unelected officials who think they know better. Revoking clearances from those who actively oppose the administration while holding sensitive positions is a matter of prudence, not a suppression of dissent. If individuals cannot be trusted to implement the policies of the administration they serve, the president is justified in taking corrective action to ensure government accountability and adherence to the voters' mandate. MSNBC's predictable outrage is also notably selective. When the Biden-Harris administration wielded federal power to target political adversaries or suppress dissent, the response from these commentators was muted. Yet, when President Trump enforces clear standards of loyalty and responsibility, they declare a democratic crisis. This double standard is what truly erodes democratic norms, holding only one side accountable. It is valid to examine the use of executive power, and questioning any administration's actions is a sign of a healthy democracy. The president needs the tools to ensure that those with access to national secrets align with the government's objectives. President Trump's executive orders, which streamline the security clearance process and hold career officials accountable, are necessary to counteract years of bureaucratic resistance and restore governmental order. The inefficiencies of the previous administration resulted in a bloated, unaccountable federal workforce more focused on personal agendas than national service. President Trump's actions are aimed at correcting this dysfunction, ensuring the government operates according to the people's will, not the preferences of entrenched interests. The mainstream media's focus on personalities and minor grievances overlooks the larger issue. The American people deserve a government that is accountable, transparent, and responsive to their will. The way forward should emphasize restoring trust and discipline within the federal government, preventing unelected officials from overshadowing the elected government's policy directives.
You know, the other piece that I would share, which people don't talk about, and it's kind of humiliating to talk about, but I think it's important to talk about, is social isolation. And you hear about this when you read about autocracies, and it's kind of a textbook thing. Okay, dissidents and autocracies, they end up socially isolated, and that's the goal. But it's very foreign and remote until it happens to you. And I've had very close friends, very, very close friends, call and tell me, I'm going to need to keep my distance until this is all over.
Why?
Because they've got a business interest maybe with the federal government, because they're worried about the impact on their family. So that support system you think is going to be there with you in the trenches, whether it's through a divorce or a death or persecution from your government, starts to vanish. There are even some family members who you find out are skittish about being there, given the gravity of the situation. That is very hard. And you end up with a very different circle than you imagine.
The economic implications of this situation are significant. When federal officials, especially those with access to sensitive information, publicly challenge the administration, it creates a ripple effect across the business and investment community. Companies dependent on federal contracts or regulatory stability may find themselves in a difficult position, having to balance the risks of associating with dissenters against potential impacts on their financial performance. This concern is not merely theoretical. Social and professional isolation often leads to tangible financial difficulties for those involved and can affect their families. Under the current administration, streamlining government operations and enhancing accountability have been prioritized. Recent executive orders have tackled not only security clearances, but also inefficiency and bureaucratic resistance by mandating leaner agency operations and reducing unnecessary regulations. These initiatives aim to ensure prudent use of taxpayer money and alignment of government employees with the policies of the elected president, rather than agendas set by unelected officials. This approach contrasts sharply with the previous administration, which tolerated and sometimes encouraged resistance among career officials. This led to an inflated bureaucracy, widespread inefficiency, and a lack of transparency, all of which eroded public trust. During the Biden-Harris era, federal agencies were reportedly used against political adversaries, and employment protections shielded those opposing the administration's goals, creating uncertainty for businesses and investors, as policy directions frequently conflicted with the electorate's preferences. While critics may argue that the current approach could lead to a chilling effect or a so-called blacklist, it is essential for executive authority to be used to ensure order and discipline within the federal workforce. The president must ensure that individuals with access to national secrets are loyal and trustworthy. Without such oversight, we risk having a government run by insiders accountable to no one, jeopardizing both economic stability and democratic accountability. There is indeed a need for balance. Overreach can set a dangerous precedent, and questioning the use of executive power is valid. The pattern of insubordination and resistance that characterized the bureaucracy under the previous administration necessitated decisive action. The current focus on efficiency, accountability, and restoring confidence in government operations marks a significant departure from the dysfunction and politicization that dominated the past 4 years.
But I mean, we've spent the past 2 months totally watching the re-implosion of our lives and building back from that. But I tell you all this, Nicole, again, not so that people play the violin for me, but because it's as easy as the president signing his pen to a piece of paper to order a revenge investigation against an American right now. This could be happening to anyone, and that's why we've decided to step out.
When American government officials who once held trusted positions turn against the administration they served, it raises serious questions about integrity and accountability. Serving in a sensitive national security role under a president requires implementing the elected leadership's policies, not undermining them. If disagreements arise, the honorable course is to resign rather than engage in anonymous leaks and media appearances that harm the administration and, by extension, the nation's standing. The current administration has prioritized revoking security clearances from those who air their grievances publicly instead of using proper channels. Security clearances are privileges, not entitlements, reserved for individuals who demonstrate competence and loyalty. This policy isn't about silencing dissent. It's about ensuring that access to classified information isn't used for personal gain or partisan attacks. The mainstream press often depicts these actions as authoritarian, but in reality, the president is instilling discipline and efficiency in a bureaucracy that became bloated and resistant under the previous administration. The Biden-Harris era allowed career officials to ignore executive directives and pursue personal agendas, compromising national security and wasting taxpayer money. This lack of transparency turned federal agencies into political entities rather than neutral administrators. Some argue that these executive actions could create a chilling effect or target political opponents. While this is a concern that merits attention, we cannot overlook the persistent bureaucratic resistance that has undermined recent administrations. The president's directives clearly state that while personal or political support for policies isn't required, their faithful implementation is a fundamental expectation for anyone in public service. The social and cultural impact of these decisions is profound. When unelected officials become celebrated for opposing the president, it undermines the principles of loyalty in public service, promoting a culture where personal ambition and media exposure are prioritized over duty and discretion. Economically, companies and institutions must consider the risks of associating with individuals under federal investigation or whose actions could jeopardize their standing with the government. The American people deserve a government that is efficient, accountable, and reflective of their electoral choices, not one controlled by insiders who disregard voter intent. The president's actions are a necessary step to rectify years of dysfunction and politicization, restoring trust and discipline in Washington. The alternative is a return to the chaos and lack of accountability that plagued the previous administration, which is unacceptable. Well, there you have it. Let's take a step back and evaluate the situation. Miles Taylor, once a trusted member of the Trump administration, chose to undermine the president by writing anonymous criticisms while still receiving a government paycheck. Now, facing the repercussions of his actions, he seeks sympathy from the very media outlets that have long defended the problematic Biden-Harris administration and its numerous failures. The truth is, loyalty is crucial. Elections have consequences. When Americans elect a president, they're not just selecting a figurehead, they're choosing a direction, a vision, and a team to implement it. If unelected officials think they know better and sabotage the agenda they're supposed to support, it undermines democracy. Isn't it reasonable for a president to expect loyalty from his staff rather than having them subvert the voters' will? The media often portrays this as a scandal, criticizing the president for using his executive power. Yet there was little outrage when previous administrations misused federal agencies against political foes, or when Joe Biden and Kamala Harris oversaw a regime marked by leaks, incompetence, and lax border control. The selective indignation is both transparent and exhausting. Let's be clear, Miles Taylor is no martyr. He's a careerist who traded loyalty for lucrative book deals and television contracts. The establishment rewards those who criticize this president because they fear what he stands for: sovereignty, accountability, and prioritizing American citizens. The broader issue here is not a president who demands loyalty. The real threat is a permanent class of bureaucrats and media elites who think they're above the electorate, believe they can dictate policy from the shadows, and never face the consequences of their actions. This is the legacy of the Biden-Harris era: chaos, weakness, and a self-serving government. So consider this: who benefits when insiders undermine the president you chose? Who profits when every act of accountability is scandalized by the media? And why do they consistently support a globalist agenda, endless wars, and open borders that undermine our communities? Ultimately, this isn't just about Miles Taylor. It's about whether the officials elected to govern this country are actually allowed to do so. If the unelected class prevails, we don't have a democracy. We have a managed decline. And that is fundamentally wrong. Be sure to comment below while dropping a like and subscribing. Until next time.